The studio door slammed against the wall so hard that Felix nearly dropped the phone from his hand. "Why are you still here?" Hyunjin stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, his hair still damp with sweat from the concert, his black stage jacket hanging loosely from one shoulder. Felix froze. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The studio was almost completely dark except for the pale blue light spilling from the computer monitor. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered beneath the midnight rain, but inside the only sounds were the low hum of the air conditioner and Felix's uneven breathing. Hyunjin stared at him. Felix was sitting alone on the floor beside the mirror, still wearing the clothes from the performance. His stage makeup had begun to fade. A towel lay beside him. One shoe was missing, and his hands were shaking. Hyunjin's expression changed immediately. "Felix." "Fine," answer came too quickly. Hyunjin stepped inside and closed the door. "You always say that when you're not fine." Looked away. The concert had ended almost 2 hours ago. Everyone else had already left. That was what made Hyunjin's stomach twist. He had forgotten his in-ear monitors and returned to the building expecting the studio to be empty. He had expected silence. He had not expected to find Felix sitting alone in the dark as if he had been waiting for someone who never came. Hyunjin approached slowly. "Happened. Nothing." "I said nothing happened." His voice cracked. Hyunjin stopped. That tiny fracture in Felix's voice frightened him more than any obvious injury could have. Felix was usually the person who smiled when everyone else was exhausted. He was the one who turned awkward silence into laughter, who remembered everyone's favorite snacks, who noticed when someone was quiet even before they admitted something was wrong. But tonight there was no smile. Hyunjin crouched in front of him. "Look at me." Refused. "Licks." "Nothing." Hyunjin reached toward him, then stopped before touching his shoulder. He knew Felix hated being treated like he was fragile, so instead, Hyunjin lowered himself onto the floor. For a while they simply sat there. Rain tapped against the glass, the silence became heavier. Finally Felix whispered, "I messed up tonight." Hyunjin's eyebrows drew together. "What? On stage? You didn't." "I did." "You think I didn't see the entire performance?" Felix swallowed. There was a moment during the second song. "I know." Looked at him sharply. Hyunjin continued quietly. "You missed one step." Felix's face fell, and nobody noticed. "I noticed. That's the problem." Hyunjin stared at him. Felix laughed bitterly. "You always notice." The words carried something deeper than accusation. Hyunjin felt it immediately. Something had been building inside Felix for longer than tonight. "You've been hiding something." Looked toward the mirror. His reflection looked exhausted. "Just tired." "Then why didn't you go home?" Felix said nothing. "Why did you stay here alone?" Still nothing. Hyunjin's patience began to fracture. "Why are you sitting in a dark studio after midnight wearing one shoe?" Felix glanced down. For the first time, a faint smile appeared. "I didn't notice." Almost laughed, almost. But then Felix's smile disappeared, and Hyunjin saw the truth. Felix wasn't staying because he wanted to practice. He was staying because he didn't want to go somewhere else. "Who called you?" Hyunjin asked. Felix's eyes immediately shifted. Hyunjin's stomach dropped. "Felix, no one, don't lie to me." "Not lying. You looked at your phone." Locked the screen. Hyunjin stared at it. "Show me." "No." Answer was quiet but firm. Hyunjin blinked. Felix rarely refused him like that. "What did they say?" "Nothing important." "Then show me." "Hyunjin." Their eyes met. The tension between them suddenly felt more dangerous than any argument they had ever had. Felix slowly stood. "I said it's nothing." His knee buckled. Hyunjin caught him immediately. "Felix." "Okay, stop saying that." The words exploded through the studio. Felix went still. Hyunjin's hands tightened around his arms. Then Hyunjin realized how cold Felix was, not stage cold, not air conditioner cold. His skin was frighteningly cold. Hyunjin's anger disappeared. "Sit down." "I can stand." "Sit." Something in Hyunjin's voice finally made Felix obey. Hyunjin grabbed the water bottle from the table and handed it to him. Felix stared at it. "Drink." "You sound like my mother." "Your mother probably has more patience than I do." That earned the smallest laugh. Hyunjin watched him drink one sip, then another. His hands were still trembling. Hyunjin looked at the clock. 12:47. He remembered the concert. Felix had smiled through the final song. He had waved at fans. He had laughed when Hyunjin accidentally bumped his shoulder. He had even leaned against Hyunjin during the final greeting. Now Hyunjin suddenly wondered how much of that had been real. "Long have you been feeling like this?" Felix lowered the bottle. "I don't know." "That's not an answer." "Maybe because I don't know." Hyunjin stared at him. Felix looked exhausted, then his phone vibrated. Both of them looked at it. Felix grabbed it instantly. Hyunjin saw the name before Felix could hide the screen. His expression changed. "Who is that?" Felix didn't answer. "Felix." "I need to go." stood. Hyunjin blocked the door. No, stopped. Move, until you tell me what's going on. There's nothing going on. Then why does someone keep texting you after every concert? Felix's face went pale. Hyunjin knew he had accidentally found the door to something Felix had been desperately trying to keep locked. Every concert, Felix repeated. Hyunjin's heart sank. He hadn't meant to reveal that. You've not blind. Stared at him. How long? Long enough. Closed his eyes. Hyunjin lowered his voice. Were they? Felix whispered. Someone I thought was gone. The room seemed to become colder. Hyunjin slowly stepped closer. Gone where? Felix opened his eyes. His expression was unlike anything Hyunjin had ever seen. Fear, real fear. Out of my life. Hyunjin felt his chest tighten. What did they do? Felix didn't answer. Felix, I don't want you involved. Too late. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Looked at him for several seconds, then he whispered, they know something about me. Hyunjin frowned. What? Something that could ruin everything. Phone vibrated again. Felix flinched. Hyunjin looked at the screen. This time, Felix didn't hide it quickly enough. There was only one sentence. I know what happened before the debut. Hyunjin's blood ran cold. Felix immediately turned the phone over. Forget you saw that. Hyunjin stared at him. Absolutely not. Hyunjin, you stayed here alone because someone threatened you. I said forget it. Are you being followed? Felix looked away. That was enough. Hyunjin's jaw tightened. Felix, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Sometimes I think I am. Sometimes, Felix pressed both hands against his face. I don't know what's real anymore. That sentence destroyed Hyunjin, because Felix wasn't asking for attention, he wasn't being dramatic, he sounded genuinely lost. Hyunjin slowly approached him. Look at me. Didn't. Hyunjin gently touched his wrist. Look at me. Finally did. I believe you. Felix's eyes immediately filled with tears. Hyunjin hadn't expected that, neither had Felix. One tear slipped down his cheek. Felix quickly wiped it away. Don't what? Look at me like that. What? Like you're worried. Hyunjin's voice softened. I am worried. Don't be. I can't. Lips trembled. You have enough problems. Then give me one more. Stared at him. Hyunjin swallowed. I'd rather know what you're carrying than watch you carry it alone. Looked away. For several seconds he fought himself, then his shoulders dropped. There was someone. Hyunjin waited. Before everything changed, before we debuted, before all of this. Voice became quieter. Someone who knew me before people knew Felix. Hyunjin listened. They weren't supposed to come back. Why? Felix's fingers curled around the edge of his jacket. Because I left them. Hyunjin's eyes narrowed. You left them. I had to. Why? Felix stared at the floor. Because they wanted something from me. Didn't answer. Hyunjin waited. Then Felix whispered the words that made his entire body go rigid. They wanted me to choose between them and my future. Hyunjin stared. And you chose your future. Nodded. Then why are they back? I don't know. Vibration. Felix froze. Hyunjin looked toward the phone. This time Felix didn't reach for it. The screen lit up. A photograph appeared. Felix stared at it. Hyunjin watched the color disappear from his face. What is it? Felix couldn't speak. Hyunjin reached for the phone. Felix grabbed his wrist. Don't. Please. Hyunjin stopped. The desperation in Felix's voice was enough. Felix looked at the photograph from across the room. His breathing became shallow. Hyunjin could see it. Whoever was behind those messages wasn't simply threatening Felix. They knew exactly how to break him. What did they send you? Felix's eyes were fixed on the phone. Memory. Hyunjin frowned. What does that mean? Felix whispered. A picture from the night I disappeared. Hyunjin went still. You disappeared? Felix looked at him. Before debut. The words hung between them. Hyunjin suddenly remembered something. A story Felix had never fully explained. The missing weeks. The strange gaps in his early timeline. The way Felix always became uncomfortable whenever someone asked about the period before everything began. Hyunjin had assumed it was private. Now he wondered whether it had been painful. Where were you? Felix's eyes filled with tears again. I thought nobody knew. Hyunjin stepped closer. Apparently someone does. Nodded. Then the studio lights suddenly went out. Felix gasped. Darkness swallowed them. Hyunjin instinctively grabbed Felix's hand. Stay close. The emergency lights flickered on, once, twice. Then the studio door slowly moved. Hyunjin turned. Nobody stood outside. The hallway was empty. Felix squeezed his hand. Hyunjin. Here. Door moved again. A cold draft entered the studio. Hyunjin walked toward it. Felix pulled him back. Don't. Hyunjin looked over his shoulder. Why? Felix's eyes were fixed on the floor. There was something beneath the door, a small white envelope. Hyunjin stared at it. Felix whispered, no. Hyunjin bent down. Touch it. Hyunjin stopped. Why? Because that's how they used to contact me. Hyunjin looked at him. Used to. Felix's breathing shook. They're back. Hyunjin slowly picked up the envelope. Felix's face crumbled. Hyunjin, please. Hyunjin opened it. There was a photograph inside. He turned it over and stopped breathing. It showed Felix, younger, standing outside a building Hyunjin recognized. But that wasn't the worst part. Someone stood beside Felix. Their face had been scratched away. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "You were never supposed to tell him." Hyunjin looked at Felix. Felix was crying silently. "Tell me what?" Felix shook his head. "Tell me what?" I can't tell you." "Why?" Felix stared at the photograph. "Because if I tell you, you might hate me." Hyunjin felt something crack inside his chest. "I could never hate you for being afraid." "You might. Try me." Closed his eyes. Then the phone rang, not a message, a call, unknown number. Felix stared at the screen. Hyunjin stared too. The phone continued ringing once, twice, 3 times. Felix finally answered. He said nothing. Neither did the person on the other end. Then a distorted voice whispered through the speaker. "Tell Hyunjin the truth." Went completely still. Hyunjin's eyes widened. The voice continued. "Or I will." The call ended. Felix dropped the phone. Hyunjin caught him as his knees gave out. "Felix!" Felix buried his face against Hyunjin's shoulder. For several seconds, he couldn't breathe. Hyunjin wrapped both arms around him. "I'm here." Shook violently. "They know." "Who?" "Everything." Hyunjin held him tighter. "Then we'll find out everything too." Lifted his head. "No, you don't know what you're promising." Hyunjin stared into his eyes. "Then tell me." Felix's lips parted. Nothing came out. Hyunjin waited. Finally, Felix whispered, "The person in that photograph wasn't my enemy." Hyunjin frowned. "Then who were they?" Felix looked toward the dark window. "My best friend." Silence. "What happened to them?" Felix swallowed. "I thought I killed them." Hyunjin couldn't move. Felix immediately shook his head. "Not like that. I didn't." "Felix, I didn't physically kill them." "Then what do you mean?" "I destroyed their life." Voice broke. "I left when they needed me most." Hyunjin watched him. "And they blamed you." Nodded. "For years." "Then why come back now?" Felix's eyes shifted toward the photograph. "I don't know." The studio became silent again. Then Hyunjin noticed something, a faint red light. It was coming from the corner near the ceiling. His expression changed. "Felix." "What?" "Don't move." Froze. Hyunjin slowly looked upward. A tiny camera was hidden above the speaker. Its red indicator was blinking, recording. Felix followed his gaze. His face went white. Hyunjin stood. "Someone has been watching us." Felix's breathing stopped. Hyunjin moved toward the camera. "Hyunjin, don't." He reached for it. The red light suddenly disappeared. Then the studio monitor turned on by itself. A video began playing. Felix screamed, "Turn it off." Hyunjin turned. On the screen was Felix, years younger, sitting in a room Hyunjin had never seen, and beside him was the person from the photograph. The video was silent, until a subtitle appeared, "You should have left him alone." Hyunjin looked at Felix. Felix had stopped crying. His face was completely empty. "Felix." The video changed. A second clip appeared. This time, Hyunjin saw himself. Not tonight, not recently. A recording from several months earlier. Hyunjin entering the same building. Alone, Felix stared at the screen. "How do they have that?" Hyunjin didn't answer, because he had suddenly realized something. The person behind the messages hadn't discovered Felix recently. They had been watching both of them for much longer. Felix whispered, "Hyunjin." "What?" The screen went black. Then white letters appeared, "You brought him back to me." Hyunjin turned toward Felix. Felix's expression collapsed. "Does that mean?" Felix backed away. "I don't know." "I swear." The studio door slammed shut. Both of them jumped. Hyunjin rushed toward it, locked. He tried the handle, nothing. "Hyunjin, stay back." Pulled harder, nothing. Then every light in the studio came on at once. The monitor displayed one final message, "Midnight, old practice building." "Come alone below." It was a photograph. Felix recognized the place instantly. Hyunjin didn't. "Where is that?" Felix stared at the screen. His voice was barely audible. "Where everything started." Hyunjin looked at him. "Where does it end?" Felix slowly shook his head. "That's the problem." Looked toward Hyunjin. "It doesn't." Monitor went dark, and somewhere beyond the locked studio door, footsteps began moving slowly down the hallway. 1, 2, 3. Hyunjin reached for Felix's hand. This time, Felix didn't pull away. They stood together in the darkness, listening. The footsteps stopped directly outside. A shadow appeared beneath the door. Felix held his breath. Then someone whispered from the other side, "Felix." His eyes widened. Hyunjin tightened his grip. The voice came again. "You should have listened to me." Closed his eyes. And Hyunjin realized with terrifying certainty that whatever happened before their debut had never truly ended. It had only been waiting for them to remember. The next morning, the studio was empty. There was no broken lock, no forced entry, no stranger in the hallway. Only Felix's phone remained on the floor. The last message had been deleted. but one photograph was still there. A photograph of Felix and Hyunjin sleeping on the studio floor, taken from inside the room. And underneath it, 3 words had been written. "I'm still here." Hyunjin stared at the photograph until his hands began to shake, because Felix was standing beside him, and neither of them had taken it. For the first time, Hyunjin understood why Felix had been afraid to go home. Someone hadn't simply been following Felix. Someone had been inside their world. Inside their private spaces, inside their memories, and perhaps the most terrifying question wasn't who had returned, it was how long they had been watching. Felix slowly reached for Hyunjin's hand. "Hyunjin, something happens. No, you haven't even heard what I was going to say." "I don't care." Stared at him, Hyunjin turned toward him. "You don't get to disappear alone anymore." Eyes filled with tears. "Why?" Hyunjin's expression softened. "Because you came back to me." "Look down. I never left." Hyunjin smiled faintly. "Then stop acting like you have to." Outside, the rain began again. Neither of them knew what waited at the old practice building. Neither knew who had sent the photographs. Neither knew whether Felix's past was truly coming back for revenge or whether someone was manipulating both of them for a reason neither could understand. But as they walked out of the studio together, Felix noticed something tucked beneath the door, another envelope. He stopped. Hyunjin saw it. Neither spoke. Felix slowly picked it up. Inside was a single piece of paper, no photograph, no threat. Only one sentence: "You finally brought him with you." Felix's fingers went numb. Hyunjin read it over his shoulder. And for the first time that night, Felix didn't try to hide his fear. He simply held Hyunjin's hand tighter. Together, they walked toward the elevator. Neither of them noticed the tiny camera above the hallway sign. Its red light blinked once, then disappeared. Weeks later, the truth would begin emerging in fragments. A forgotten recording. A name Felix had tried to erase. A secret from before debut that had been buried beneath years of silence. And a person Hyunjin had never met who seemed to know far too much about the bond between them. But the deepest wound would not come from discovering what Felix had done. It would come from discovering why he had done it. Because Felix hadn't abandoned his past to protect himself. He had abandoned it to protect someone else, and that person had been watching ever since. When Hyunjin finally learned the truth, he would understand why Felix had stayed alone in the studio after the concert. Why he couldn't sleep. Why he kept checking the hallway. Why every unexpected phone call made high.
The envelope was still in Felix's hand when the elevator doors opened. Neither of them stepped inside. The empty hallway stretched behind them, washed in cold fluorescent light. Somewhere far away, a cleaning cart rattled across another floor, its wheels squeaking against the polished tiles. The building should have felt ordinary at that hour. It didn't. Felix stared at the message again. "You finally brought him with you." His thumb trembled against the paper. Hyunjin noticed. "Give it to me." Immediately folded it. "No," I said. "No." Hyunjin's expression hardened. "Are you protecting a piece of paper from me? Because every time you see something, you start asking questions. Maybe because someone is stalking you. Maybe because you don't understand what you're getting involved in. Maybe I'm tired of hearing that." Looked up. Hyunjin's eyes were darker than usual. He wasn't angry because Felix had hidden something. He was angry because Felix was still trying to carry the danger alone. "You think I'm going to walk away because things got complicated?" Hyunjin asked. "I think you should. That's not your decision." "It is when it concerns you." Hyunjin stepped closer. "It concerns me the second someone photographs me while I'm sleeping." Flinched. Hyunjin saw it. His anger softened immediately. "I'm sorry." Looked away. "You're right, Felix. I should never have let you get this close." Hyunjin went silent. The elevator doors began closing. He reached out and stopped them. "Get in." Stared at him. Hyunjin. "In." Something about the calmness in his voice made Felix obey. The doors closed. For several seconds they stood side by side without speaking. Their reflections stared back from the metallic walls. Felix looked exhausted. Hyunjin looked furious. Neither looked safe. The elevator descended floor by floor. Felix kept his arms folded across his chest, fingers hidden beneath his sleeves. Hyunjin noticed the movement. "You're doing it again." Frowned. "What?" "Your fingers." Looked down. His right thumb was rubbing against the side of his index finger repeatedly, a small, unconscious motion. Hyunjin had seen it hundreds of times. Whenever Felix was nervous, whenever he was lying, whenever something frightened him enough that he didn't want anyone to know, Felix slowly stopped. Hyunjin gave him a look. "Not doing anything." "Been doing that since we got into the elevator." Sighed. "Do you have to notice everything?" "Yes." "That's annoying." "You love it." A tiny smile touched Felix's mouth. Then disappeared. The elevator reached the lobby, the doors opened. Hyunjin stepped out first. Felix followed. The security desk was empty. A wall clock showed 1:18 a.m. They crossed the lobby. Felix suddenly stopped. Hyunjin turned. What? Felix stared through the glass entrance doors. Outside, beneath the rain, a black sedan was parked across the street. Its headlights were off. The windows were tinted. Hyunjin followed Felix's gaze. You know that car? Felix didn't answer. Felix. I don't know. You said that too quickly. Swallowed. The sedan's engine suddenly started. The headlights came on. Felix's face changed. Move. He grabbed Hyunjin's wrist. They stepped away from the doors. The car pulled into traffic. Hyunjin watched it disappear around the corner. Who was that? I don't know. I said I don't know. Hyunjin turned toward him. Then why did you look like you were about to run? Felix's breathing became uneven. Because I've seen that car before. Where? Felix looked toward the empty street. Outside my apartment. Hyunjin froze. When? 3 nights ago. You didn't tell me? I didn't know if it was the same car. Just said you'd seen it before. I said I thought I had. Stop. The word came out sharper than Felix intended. He closed his eyes. Sorry. Hyunjin watched him. Felix pressed his fingers against his temple. I'm tired. I know. I haven't slept properly in days. I know. I don't want to be scared anymore. Hyunjin's expression softened. Felix looked at him. That was the first honest thing he'd said all night. Hyunjin stepped closer. Then let me be scared with you. Stared at him for a moment. His composure broke. His eyes became glassy. You shouldn't say things like that. I might believe you. Hyunjin didn't hesitate. Then believe me. Looked away. They stood beneath the building's awning as rain fell beyond them. Hyunjin finally spoke. We're not going to the old building tonight. Looked at him. What? You heard me. They told me to go. They told you to go alone. Went quiet. Hyunjin folded his arms. That means they expect you to obey. Stared at him. And you think I should ignore them. I think we should make them wonder why you suddenly stopped listening. Felix's eyes narrowed. You want to provoke them? No. Hyunjin glanced toward the street. I want to understand them. Shook his head. You don't know what you're doing. Neither do you. That silenced him. Hyunjin took out his phone. We're going somewhere else. Where? Home. Immediately stiffened. Hyunjin noticed. Your home? No, mine. Felix shook his head. Hyunjin, if they're watching me, they might be watching you too. Exactly. Stared. Hyunjin's mouth tightened. If someone is watching us, going somewhere predictable is the stupidest thing we can do. Blinked. Where are we going? Hyunjin looked at him. Somewhere nobody expects us to be. Almost smiled. You've been watching too many thrillers. Maybe. You're terrible at planning. You still trust me. Smile disappeared. I don't know if I trust anyone anymore. Hyunjin's face changed. Felix immediately regretted saying it. But Hyunjin didn't get angry. Instead, he said quietly, then start with me. Stared at him. Just me. For a long moment, Felix didn't move. Then he nodded. They left through the side entrance. The rain had become heavier. Hyunjin pulled his hood over his head. Felix did the same. They walked several blocks without speaking. Felix kept looking behind them. Every few seconds, left, right, behind. Hyunjin noticed. He said nothing. At the next intersection, Felix stopped. Hyunjin stopped too. What? Someone's there. Hyunjin turned. A man stood beneath an umbrella across the street. His face was hidden. He wasn't moving. Felix's fingers closed around Hyunjin's sleeve. Don't look. Hyunjin looked anyway. The man lifted his phone. Felix immediately pulled Hyunjin away. Walk. Felix. Walk. They crossed the street. Then another. Then another. They turned into a narrow alley crowded with closed restaurants and delivery scooters. Felix's breathing became faster. Hyunjin grabbed his arm. Slow down. Don't stop. Don't stop. They kept walking behind them. Footsteps echoed. Felix heard them. Hyunjin heard them too. Neither spoke. The footsteps became faster. Hyunjin looked over his shoulder. The alley behind them was empty. Keep moving. They turned another corner. The footsteps stopped. Felix stopped too. Silence. Rainwater ran along the gutter. Hyunjin stared into the darkness. Maybe they're gone. Shook his head. No, they always stop when I stop. Hyunjin looked at him. What? Felix swallowed. They want me to know they're there. Hyunjin's stomach tightened. The footsteps started again, this time from behind them, closer. Felix grabbed Hyunjin's hand. They ran. Their shoes splashed through puddles. Hyunjin heard Felix breathing hard beside him. They reached the end of the alley. A taxi passed. Hyunjin stepped into the road and waved frantically. The taxi stopped. Get in. Felix climbed inside. Hyunjin followed. Go. The driver looked at them through the mirror. Where? Hyunjin gave him an address. The taxi pulled away. Felix turned toward the rear window. The alley entrance disappeared behind them. No one followed. His shoulders dropped. Hyunjin leaned back. Breathe. Inhaled slowly, then exhaled. His hands were still shaking. Hyunjin reached over. Felix looked at his hand. Hyunjin didn't grab him. He simply left his palm open between them. Felix stared at it, then took it. Their fingers intertwined. The taxi continued through the wet streets. Neither spoke for several minutes. Eventually Felix whispered, "I'm sorry." Hyunjin looked at him. "For what?" "For dragging you into this." "You didn't." "I did." "No," stared at their hands. "I should have told you months ago. About the messages, about everything." Hyunjin's jaw tightened. "Long?" Felix didn't answer. "How long have you been receiving them?" Felix looked out the window. 3 months. Hyunjin's eyes widened. 3 months. Sometimes there were no messages for weeks. "You said nothing." "I thought it would stop." "It didn't." "No." Hyunjin looked at him. "What did the first message say?" Felix's expression became distant. "It said, 'I remember you.'" Hyunjin waited. The second said, "You can't hide forever." Then Felix swallowed. "Then they started sending photographs." "Of you?" "At first." "Then?" Felix's eyes shifted toward him. "Then they started sending photographs of people around me." Hyunjin's expression hardened. "Who?" "My family." Hyunjin went silent. Felix continued, "Friends." His voice became quieter. "Staff." Then he looked down. "You." Hyunjin stared at him. "First picture of you came 2 months ago. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were smiling." Hyunjin frowned. "What?" Felix's eyes filled with tears. "You were sitting in the practice room with your headphones on. You didn't know someone was taking your picture." Hyunjin's chest tightened. "I saw that picture every night for a week." "Felix, I kept thinking if I ignored them, they'd get bored. And when they started changing my routines." Hyunjin suddenly understood the strange habits, the random changes. Felix leaving buildings through different exits, checking windows, avoiding certain streets, sometimes arriving at the studio hours earlier, sometimes disappearing immediately after schedules. It hadn't been moodiness. It had been fear. "You've been doing this alone for 3 months." Felix nodded. Hyunjin stared at him. "Why?" Felix looked toward the rain-streaked window. "Because the last time I asked someone to help me, they disappeared." The sentence was so quiet that Hyunjin almost missed it. "What happened?" Felix's eyes closed. "That's the part I never told anyone." The taxi moved through a tunnel. For several seconds, darkness swallowed the windows. Felix's reflection appeared beside Hyunjin's. "You remember when I said there was someone before debut?" "Yes." "They weren't just my friend." Hyunjin waited. "They were the person who knew everything about me." His fingers tightened. "Fears, my family, my dreams, every stupid thing I used to believe." He laughed quietly. "We thought we'd make it together." "Together?" "Both of us wanted to perform." Hyunjin listened. "But only one of us got the chance." Felix's voice became fragile. "And that was me." Hyunjin understood. "What happened to them?" Felix looked down. "They were offered something." "Contract." Hyunjin's eyes narrowed. "With the company?" Felix shook his head. "Someone else." "Who?" "I never found out." The taxi exited the tunnel. Streetlights returned. Felix continued. "They wanted my friend to convince me to leave." "Leave what?" "Everything." Hyunjin stared at him. "Your career, my future." Felix's voice shook. "They told me I had a choice. Either I walked away or they would make sure my friend paid the price." Hyunjin's expression darkened. "You walked away?" "Yes." "Your friend?" Felix's eyes became distant. "They blamed me, saving them for abandoning them." Hyunjin didn't know what to say. Felix looked down. "I thought if I disappeared they'd be safe. But they weren't." "No, happened." Felix's voice dropped to a whisper. "They disappeared instead." Hyunjin felt cold. "Disappeared completely. No contact, nothing." "Police?" Felix shook his head. "I couldn't explain why I was looking for them without explaining everything else." "So you did nothing?" Flinched. Hyunjin immediately regretted the words. "I didn't mean." "I know." Stared out the window. "I did nothing." His voice sounded empty, "and that's what I can't forgive myself for." Hyunjin looked at him. "You were young. I knew they were in danger. You didn't know where they were. I could have looked harder. You were terrified. I should have been brave. I should have gone back. I should have." "Stop." Went quiet. Hyunjin held his hand tighter. "You survived something you didn't know how to survive." Eyes glistened. "That doesn't make me innocent." "I didn't say it did." Looked at him. Hyunjin continued. "But guilt isn't the same thing as responsibility." Stare. The taxi slowed. Hyunjin looked toward the driver. "Here." They got out beneath the awning of a small 24-hour cafe. It was almost empty. Warm yellow light spilled through the windows. The smell of coffee and toasted bread filled the air. Felix looked at the cafe. You brought me here. It's open. That's your plan, coffee. Someone is stalking us. Coffee first. Stared, then unexpectedly he laughed, a real laugh, small, tired, but real. Hyunjin smiled. There. What? That? Felix frowned. What? You laughed. So I haven't heard that sound all night. Felix's expression softened. You're weird. You already knew that. They entered. The warmth immediately touched Felix's face. He removed his wet hood. Hyunjin ordered 2 drinks. Felix sat near the window. Hyunjin deliberately chose a seat facing the entrance. Felix noticed. You're doing that thing. What thing? Watching the door. Hyunjin shrugged. Maybe I'm learning from you. Looked down. Hyunjin sat across from him. Tell me about the old building. Felix's expression immediately changed. No, that's where they want me to go. Exactly. Hyunjin leaned closer. Which means there might be something there they don't want you to find. Stared. You really think this is a puzzle? No. Then what? I think someone is controlling the story you're being told. Became silent. Hyunjin continued. They keep giving you pieces, messages, photographs, threats. They're deciding what you know and when you know it. Slowly nodded. And you think they're hiding something. I think they're afraid of something. Felix's eyes narrowed. What? Your memory. The words hit him. Felix looked away. Hyunjin noticed. You don't remember everything, do you?